Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon. We are letting some more people join us. I'm going to wait till the attendee count stalls out, but we are climbing. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hello, everyone. We're so happy that you are here this evening. Yes, thank you. Sending all those hellos in the chat. That is awesome. All right, I am going to go ahead and get started because I know for a fact the next 2 hours are going to go by very, very quickly. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Lindsay Stevens, and I'm the Executive Director at the Center for Strengthening the Teaching Profession. And it is my great honor to welcome you here as the project lead for the Inclusionary Practices Project through waOSPI. This series is sponsored by the Inclusionary Practices Professional Development Cadre, made up of all the organizations you see represented on your screen. Making this series happen was truly a collaborative process between all of these organizations and all of these partners. We've worked together for the past 4 years to create not just a project around inclusion, but really a movement that's dedicated to it. There's representatives from each of these organizations here tonight, as well as on the planning team that's been putting this all together. My hope is that it's apparent to everyone joining us that this is incredibly important to all of us and to our entire state, and we're going to continue to work together in an effort to make true systemic change that's focused on creating schools, districts, and systems where all students feel they're valued and they belong. We do have some interpretation and language access. I believe that everyone out there in the webinar will need to choose the language that they would like to use to access the session. You should have this world globe down at the bottom. We also have, you can see on our screen, an ASL interpreters to help everyone access the webinar. I'd also like to take a moment to respectfully acknowledge that the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction is located on the tribal lands of the Squaxin Island Nation, and I myself am on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe, where the people have lived and stewarded this land since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. Both are descendants of the maritime people who live and prospered along the shores of the southernmost inlets of the Salish Sea. I'd also like to say that as a statewide organization and coalition, and knowing that all of you are joining us from across the state, we know that each one of us is on the lands of one of the many tribes of Washington, and with Katie and Shelley, beyond. So I do this to open a space of recognition, inclusion, and respect for our sovereign tribal partners and all Indigenous students, families, and staff in our community. All right. So there are a few logistics. Please use the Q&A function to ask any questions for our interpreters today. We do have the chat open. We like to see you using it and introducing yourselves and connecting with one another, but we won't be taking any questions out of the chat. That has to be done in the Q&A. Clock hours will be made available after the completion of all 3 sessions, and unfortunately can only be awarded to those who are logged into the webinar. So if you're out there watching the live stream, you can still go to this registration link on this slide. You can still register. We'll get you right in. So if you need interpretation services or clock hours, please join us in the webinar. All right, we would really love to know where you all are from. So you can use this QR code, or you can go to this link. Oh, look at everyone. We're from everywhere. And you can go ahead and tell us on the Mentimeter where you are joining us today. All right. Oops. I want to go back and show you where we are from. Wow.
That's amazing.
Hey,
Awesome.
Lindsay.
Okay.
Lindsay, it's Tanya. I just wanted to do a quick check. Are we recording?
Erin is going to hit record right now.
Thanks.
Okay. It's also being recorded on the webinar, and that live stream will be uploaded following as well. All right. I can see that this is just going to keep on going. It's a statewide movement. We have over 1,000 participants right now, which is so exciting. So we're just going to keep that going. All right. Okay, so what I would love to do, since this is a statewide movement, I'd love to turn it over to Chris Reichdahl at the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good to see so many to check out here in the chat where you're all from. Welcome from all parts of North America, quite frankly. Great to have folks on the East Coast, both of the United States and Canada. It's a little bit late for you. That's how we party in Washington State. We start the most critical work at 4 o'clock West Coast time, and then we roll from there. So we're super excited about that. Again, I'm Chris Reichdahl, Superintendent of Public Instruction in the state of Washington. I had the great honor of being the state's Chief Education Officer. It's an elected position in our state, one of 12 in the country. So not only do I get to do this great work with a team of about 400 here at OSPI and all these great partners, but I directly represent nearly 8 million Washingtonians. So it's pretty amazing that we get to be a part of this work, and I am super grateful you are here. There are tons of participants here. If you're looking at your count, mine shows over 1,100. This work continues to build and grow, and we're learners. So while there's a little leadership coming out of our state that we are so excited about, we're also learning a lot from those of you who are a part of this, no matter where you are. So thank you. Our communications team is supporting this, as you know, interpretation here, as well as live stream to reduce barriers. Always want to make sure that we are as inclusive as possible. And I think you heard ways to contact folks in case you're not having the experience that you expect here. The commitment to this inclusive work is kind of woven through our work here at our SCA, the state education agency. All 50 states have this, and most of the national governments, of course, whether you're Canada or the United States, have a major role in their federal system for the oversight of this and the regulation of this. For us, we really landed on this direction of inclusionary practices as one of the most systemic ways to transform the experience for students with disabilities. We've got transition partners here, which is amazing. This is everything to us. We are proud to say that a couple, 3 years ago, we were about 77,000 students who were spending 80% to 100% of their time in their general education setting with their peers. We've grown that by 15,000 students. So we're up to about 93,000 of our students. That's out of a base of about 134,000. So work to go, but the progress has been very powerful. And all of the partners that you saw earlier listed have been a part of legislative efforts in our state to get resources, to get policy in place, and then, of course, to put things like this on so that we're learning from each other, growing from experts from around the country. Could not be more proud of the work that we're doing in the state. And if we can help you in any way offline from here, I know our team is willing to share the experience we've had. This hasn't gone without a lot of advocacy. So a big thanks to everybody in our state. We've put some serious effort into this over the last 4 or 5 years. We've got another $1 billion requested. Keep in mind, that's on a base budget of about $30 billion of biennium for our state. So we've asked for another $1 billion just dedicated to the support of students with disabilities. That comes in a couple of forms. Number one, we've got a cap here. Almost all of the states do. Our cap is 13.5%. Our legislature will only fund our formula funds to support students with disabilities where 13.5% or fewer percent of students in a district are served with an IEP. That's obviously ridiculous. We need to remove the cap. So we're asking our legislature to remove it. We're moving pretty expeditiously to a higher funding rate per student. We always have to remind our policymakers, and I know you do, that our students with disabilities are general education students first and foremost. They are general education students. And what we do is put specially designed instruction so that they can accelerate and move through school in an equitable way. There is no such thing. We got to kill the idea that there's gen ed, special ed, and CTE, career and tech ed. There are just gen ed students who have different pathways and different supports. So that funding increase is a big part of our $1 billion. And then lastly, we've asked for more money to do more of this work. We're trying to build that expertise in our state and build that confidence in gen ed teachers in particular to support students in ways that they never have before, from UDL all the way to, teachers who have maybe for the very first time put their toe into this. We want them to be really engaged. You saw the partners, but another shout out on AESD. So we've got our regional networks here. We've got our school principals, AWSP here. We've got transition teams and CCTS. We've got Cedar Center here. C-STEP, they do a ton of work with us. They're amazing. Family Engagement Collaborative, our team here. The University of Washington is here, one of the greatest research institutions in the country. And that said, I was going to throw out a go Cougs. So on the other side of the state, there's a great institution, but it's UW today that we're relying on, and we're super excited for their work at the Herring Center. WASA, our superintendents, an amazing labor organization, our state, Washington Education Association. Thank you for the partnership. Everyone here, just amazing work, and thanks to all of you who have been a part of this. Lastly, when you bring in folks like Samuel and Dan Habib and Dr. Yemi Stembridge, and Dr. Stembridge has been a part of a lot of work we're doing in the state, not just in this space, but a remarkable thinker, one of America's great leaders in education. Super grateful there. And of course, Katie and Shelley, you can't do this work without that kind of leadership. And we go high and low and far and wide at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday to get the best talent, and we brought it here for you today. So again, thank you to everybody. This is all that matters. And as I say to my team, and I've been doing this for 6 years now, yes, we want every single student to have success in public education, their charter schools, their private schools, their tribal compact schools. But that means we have to see students for who they are individually. No formula model works for everyone. No general tier 1 system works for everyone. It has to be about seeing students for where they are, who they are, and all the amazing capabilities. And that means we go the extra mile. We add those supplemental supports to gen ed dollars to lift up students. That's what it's about. Thanks for being a part of the Inclusionary Practices team here. Have an awesome 1 hour and 45 minutes. Even if it's late on the East Coast, you will get to the recording of the Golden Globes. I assure you, it will still be there when you're done. This is where you want to be right now. Back to you all. Thank you, Tanya and team. Have a great time.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Reykdal. Thanks, everyone. My name is Tanya May, and I have the honor of serving as the Assistant Superintendent of Special Education for Washington at OSPI. I am going to move very quickly because I know what you want is to hear from our amazing leads today. So very quickly, I just want to say welcome to Dr. Katie Novak and Dr. Shelley Moore. Katie is an internationally renowned education consultant, author, adjunct professor, former assistant superintendent. She has over 20 years of experience in teaching and administration, earned a doctorate in curriculum and teaching, and is the author of a dozen published books and counting, because I can't even keep track of that. Katie designs and presents professional learning opportunities nationally and internationally, and focuses on universal design for learning, multi-tier system of support, and universally designed leadership. And I also want to just welcome Dr. Shelley Moore. She's a sought-after educator, researcher, consultant, and storyteller who works with school districts and community organizations across Canada and the US. And we'd like to congratulate Dr. Moore on her successful dissertation defense. Yay. Her research has been featured at national and international conferences and is constructed based on theory and effective practices of inclusion, special education, curriculum, and teacher professional development. So with no further delay, welcome, Katie.
Hello, everyone. Shelley, before this started, Shelley and I were given a name. We're kind of like Brangelina now, because when Lindsay was talking to us, she called us collectively Kelly. It's like a little like vibe between Katie and Shelley, and that's what we're going by now. So how do you feel about that one half of Kelly?
I mean, I think we should go full out and be like Kelly Morvac.
Kelly Morvac.
I mean, let's just go
really
full
good
in. T-shirts made, family trees begun. Let's do it.
Okay, I demand a fanny pack. If we're gonna go hashtag, I need a fanny pack. I have to put all my things in it. So everyone, we are so happy to be here with you. And what is amazing about Shelley and I working together is we can provide lots of different lenses that help you to understand inclusion as you zoom in to the individual children who you love and support, and zoom out and talk about how we do this work at the classroom, at the school, at the district, and at the state level. So I want to start off by flipping through digitally a children's book. And Shelley, you have to help me out here and tell me, as I'm playing this, what do you see? Now, This is a children's book. It's called Zoom. And in the chat right now, if you're interested, I put a link to a resource document where there's copies of the slide, and you can of course go back later. We'll also put this on the resource page for the project, so don't feel like you need to do that now, but you can get a link to this video. And what's going to happen is we're going to start really zoomed in to something, and you have to guess what it is, Shelley. And we're going to keep zooming out a little bit more. And just because we can't see the first thing doesn't mean that it isn't there and it isn't someone's whole world. So here we go, Shelley. You're going to tell us what you see. And for everyone out there in the cyberspace, you can let us know in the chat what you think is happening as well.
Okay.
So start off, right? Boom, boom, boom. We're going to open up this book. We're doing that, of course, digitally.
Are we zooming yet? No, it's a maple leaf.
So Canadian.
It's not a maple leaf. It's a rooster. It's a Canadian rooster.
Canadian rooster.
Oh, my neighbors have roosters. Maybe those are like their kids looking at the rooster. Oh, we're zooming out. I see it. We're zooming out. Now we're on a farm. Oh yeah, this was the cover of the book. Okay. Yeah, we're at a farm. I mean, it's a big farm, probably in Alberta, Midwest for sure. Oh, it's not a farm. It's a play set. Oh, now it looks like it's a magazine. It's a magazine.
You nailed it.
Oh my goodness, look at that. Oh, I don't know. I see another hand. Okay. Magazine. Very tired person's got to be a mom. A mom on vacation. She's on a boat, on a cruise.
She's sleeping.
Oh yeah, because the kids are in school. That's what happens. Oh, cruise ship. I love when I guess right. I love that. Okay, we're zooming out. Oh my goodness, why is there letters? Is this another magazine? It's a bus. You got me there, Katie. I didn't expect that. It's a bus in a city. What are we on, another magazine now? A television? It's a television in a very, looks like the desert, Arizona. Oh my goodness, is that a postage stamp? Come on. It is. What? I mean, the pixels needed to zoom in that close. This must have been high definition. I just have to tell you. And it keeps going. I don't remember. Wow. What? Oh my goodness.
And we just keep going by Zoom.
I am
right out to the
all
end.
the way. I am blown away a little bit right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. Now,
Yeah, I love that.
Whole thing is
Started off with a maple leaf.
I mean, some people would have called it the head of a rooster, which I'm sure has a scientific name. Help us out, teachers. If there's
What
a
is it
name
called? What is it called?
for this right here,
A rooster head.
the rooster mohawk.
Comb.
A comb. No, wait, is the comb here or the comb here? What's the difference? Everyone has to help us out. Is the head the comb or is the doodle the comb?
Waddles on the bottom.
Waddle. Okay.
The things you learn after 4 p.m. Honestly.
Oh my gosh. We have the comb and the waddle. But
Comb and the
here's
waddle.
the thing. Tonight, Shelley, you're going to be talking a lot about the rooster and the fact that when that is your lens, that is your whole world.
It really is.
Sometimes it's really difficult to see. I'm a mom of 4. When we zoom all the way out and we're like, let's talk about the globe, you're like, what about the rooster? And so what we offer together is that dual lens. Now, I want to talk for a minute about inclusive practice as being something that sits upon 3 legs of a stool. And that if we're going to include every single student in the classrooms that are rightfully theirs, we have to make sure that we shift belief systems. We have to believe that every child is capable of the highest levels of success when we get the conditions right. And those conditions should be available everywhere. We have to have much more asset-based beliefs about children and teachers and what they are capable of. And we really have to interrogate our beliefs that being separate is somehow beneficial. We also have to build an incredible skill set on behalf of educators to make sure that we are recognizing what the barriers are that prevent success and that we can eliminate them through design. And this requires really big systems shifts. We have to change the way that we schedule. We have to change the way that we fund our schools. We have to change the way that we offer professional learning, because at the core of this work are students who are capable of being successful, and we have to move the system until that happens. Recently, someone was talking about how broken the system was, and I made a comment that I didn't think that it was broken, but I think we should break it.
Yes.
Because it's doing exactly what it was meant to do, which was to provide advantages and privileges to some students at the expense of others who are excluded. So let's break it.
Break it.
Break it. So what we want to know is, why are you mostly here tonight? We're going to launch a poll here, and it might be all of these things, but which of these things is most on your heart? Are you here because of a child or children? Are you here because of your classroom, your school, your district? Are you coming in hot and you're changing the state? You're back out here looking zoomed out. So I would love to see in the poll where everyone is. And Shelley, have you ever been in a webinar that had 1,300 live people?
I haven't. It's blowing me away a bit. And because it's also like, this is after school, like it's in the evening. Like I'm absolutely blown away.
Break it. Leah's like, break it.
Break it. No, I saw that quote. Katie, I saw that quote and I posted it on my Instagram because it was so good. And my wife saw it. She's like, oh, that's good. That's really good.
Kelly Novak knows how to bring it. That's
totally right.
I love that Karen is like, we're going A through E, baby. Like we need to break all of it. Break it and remake it. I feel like we're like somehow like creating a song here. Gotta break it and remake it.
I put nothing past us.
Okay.
Nothing.
Option F, all the things, Kathy. I love it. And yeah, okay, I love where this is going. Now I'm going to end the poll and share the poll, because if you flip it on its side, it's pretty even, which is pretty amazing that we are all here coming to this center space, but we're coming from different lenses. Some of us are zoomed in closer and some of us are zoomed in back. But until we can ensure that every single child gets everything they need, there is work to do, and I am so happy to be here to do it. Shelley, any announcements before we go into a fun little opening activity to talk about why one size fits all is ridiculous?
It's so ridiculous. I just want to say that, like, I could look at this and click all of them. It's like kind of like that we were restricted to one, but I also look at this and I'm like, we need all of these lenses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we need them all. And so the fact that we have this kind of even spread across the board, it really shows that we have the diversity of people needed to be able to do this work. So I just am so happy everybody's here today.
All right, so let's dive in. Now,
Yay.
we talk about including all students. We want to use a lens of equity. And a lot of people, when they think of equity, jump to everyone's going to have the exact same experiences and the exact same results, which could not be further from the truth.
No way.
That would be terrible. We would be robots. It would be terrible.
No.
When we talk about having inclusive practices, we're talking about equity of access, opportunities, expectations, belonging, and hope. That we want every single child to be able to attend their home school and be in a general education classroom where they have access to the same opportunities as all of their peers. They are in classrooms with their peers. And when they are there, they have opportunities to work toward grade level standards, that they're not over in a corner doing something different, that we can create inclusive classrooms that support multiple tasks and formats as we work toward the same goals. And to do that, we really have to adopt the mindset that everyone can be successful when we get the conditions right. We just have to move away from these one-size-fits-all conditions. And if those three things come together, we have children who know they belong where they are, and they see a pathway where they're going to lead the life that they want to live. And they are absolutely steeped in hope for their future. So this is about access, opportunities, high expectations, and belonging and hope. And that is the lens that we're going to use as we zoom into the student stories with Shelley, and as we talk a little bit more about the systems work with me. And Danielle at the very bottom of that chat said, this is bigger than classrooms. And I love that you address that. This is lunchrooms, this is cafeterias, this is playgrounds. How do we create spaces and learning environments where everyone belongs? Now, we're going to start off with my favorite example of what we're often doing in schools, which is why our classrooms are often so restrictive. Now, it's winter. I'm here in Boston, Massachusetts. I know that many of you are spread like confetti across the country, and some places are warmer than others. But I want you to imagine that we have an opportunity to come back together as a group at a Vegas pool party, and it's going to be magical. And you know what? Everyone's going to have the best time. So as we plan our party, I want to really think hard about my goals, which are everyone has an awesome time cooling off because it's super hot, and you're going to get really refreshed. So I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm going to plan you the most amazing party you've ever seen in your whole life. So first of all, everyone knows that technology makes things more accessible. So I'm going to invite you all on TikTok. So keep your eyes open for that. And then if we're going swimming, everyone obviously needs a one-size-fits-all gender-neutral swimsuit.
I mean, at least it's gender neutral. I mean, I will give you a little check.
Okay, Alicia is already, she's already poking holes in this invitation.
I'm like, if you wear bikinis, you're out of luck.
Because my plan was that we all play water volleyball to cool off and then have a cheeseburger and drink a Mai Tai. Now you're saying this is absolutely ridiculous, Katie.
I'm not coming.
Who? I'm a vegan. I am not a drinker. I don't swim. What are you doing? And I say, but I worked really hard.
This works for me.
And if you tried, you could eat the cheeseburger and swim. Now, this is a ridiculous analogy, right? On purpose, because the standards that we have that we're designing for provide so much flexibility. There are so many ways to cool off, and there are so many ways to get refreshed. And if I was a flexible party planner, you would all have what you need. Many of you, however, will be excluded. So let's see how many of you will be excluded. So I am going to go back here. We are going to start the pool party, and let's see who's in. Now, while we're waiting for RSVP, Shelley, talk to me about how excited you are about my party.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'll probably arrive late and leave very early.
Like how long, what's the estimated time that you'll be at the party?
Well, I probably will just come to say hi, to be polite, and then leave, because that many people stresses me out. I mean, I know that I can talk to 1,300 people on Zoom, but like really no one's in my office with me right now. And, you know, I mean, I don't have TikTok, so I mean, I'll probably show up on the wrong day. Cheeseburger sounds good. I will give you that.
Okay. Well, okay. So we have a little problem here, everyone,
Uh-oh.
because there was very firm goals, but there was not flexible means.
Mhm.
And what people are saying is, wait, I'm left out because I don't have TikTok. Now, this analogy is not very different than what happens in our classrooms.
Mhm.
Because I might say my goal is to make sure that all students understand characterization. And then I hand out a hard copy of a novel in English with pages missing and say, if you want to know about characterization, read that book in 30 minutes and then write a response. And you say, wait a second.
Mhm.
Some students aren't decoding at grade level. We have so many multilingual learners. A printed text doesn't align itself to assistive and augmentative communication devices. If you want to know about characterization, why is everyone writing? Same exact dilemma. And that is what universal design is all about, which we will get to. So I'm going to end the poll and show you, this is so upsetting.
It's very, but I mean, like, I think if we were to apply that to a classroom, I think you'd probably get
Oh my God.
a similar spread.
Only 20% of people are excited. That, oh my gosh, I'm devastated because I spent so much time. But you know what? It is not about me as the party planner, and it's not about what I did. It's about the experience of my guests.
And can I tell you something?
Please.
I love that you pointed out here on that slide. Can you go back to that slide for a second?
Please.
Cool slide is that you pointed out what the goal was.
Mm-hmm.
And nowhere in the goal does it say you have to have TikTok. Nowhere in the goal does it say that you have to have a Mai Tai. Like, those are all, like you say, like one means. They're not flexible at all. And so, and oftentimes when I'm working with kids with disabilities, people will say, oh, just give them a different goal. I'm like, no, they don't need a different goal. They need a different activity to meet the goal. And so, like, we've provided one way to meet the goal, one activity. If kids can't do this, we assume they can't meet the goal. They can meet the goal. They just have to meet it in a different way. And that doesn't sacrifice the integrity of the goal. And that is a huge misunderstanding in the world.
When you go into your private cabana with a ice cold ginger ale in your burger, you are still cooling off and getting refreshed.
Right? We have to know what the goal is. Oh, it's so exciting.
Okay, so Shelley, in 2 minutes or less, we're doing a mini fireside chat here. Okay. And after this, we'll have the interpreters switch off, and then we're going to dive into a zoom in.
Zoom in.
So that analogy is something I share all the time, but let's go back to that definition of equity. And what would you say is the reason it is so important that every student has equitable access, opportunities to learn at high levels, high expectations, and hope?
Why is that important? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, when I look at those things, what I see is the outcome of all of those is a sense of belonging, right? Like, when you have access, opportunities, when people believe in you and are hopeful for your success, like that right there is where kids feel safe and want to take risks. That's where relationships are built. That's where community is built. And kids know, I don't care what their ability levels are, they know when those things aren't in place. The hard thing is all of those are competencies. They're not things that we master. You can't be ready for those things. And so it's kind of looking back and like, why is this important? Because everything else is built on this foundation. And I think that there are kids that we do this with. I just don't know if we do this for all of the kids. And I think that's the part that is really challenging, and uncovering those unconscious biases and the ableist views that we all grew up with, not even realizing that we don't provide opportunities to all kids. We don't provide access to all kids. We don't have high expectations of all kids, and we don't sometimes even realize that that's happening. And so I think, like, even if today we reflect on this and say, okay, like, if I look at every single kid in our community, in our school, in our classroom, in our daycare, in our sports team, can we honestly look at ourselves and say, like, do they have access? Do they have opportunity? Do I have a high expectation for them? Or is it getting clouded by history that has taught us and trained us to think the opposite?
One of the things that I always think about too is oftentimes the lack of opportunity comes from a deficit-based mindset, which you've addressed in your Presuming Competence 5 More Minutes video, which is they can't.
They can't.
I'm a mom of 4 kids, one who has some pretty significant academic needs. Do not tell me or my daughter what she is capable of.
Right.
She gets to decide that. You give her every opportunity. You make her feel like she belongs. You create a space where she can take risks, and she will show you what she is capable of, but you will not put a ceiling over her head.
And you know what? And if all we're focused on is that what kids can't do, we'll never see what they can. And there's a million reasons why kids can't do something, but part of this mindset is looking for the reasons why they can. What can they do? And it's once you see that, you can't unsee it. And that's what drives families. That's what drives self-advocates. That's what drives teachers who do this work, because this is like where that foundation is built.
So let's give a moment for the interpreters to switch, and then you're going to zoom into the experience.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, is it time? Okay.
Wow.
Well, before I start, I want to take a minute. I know that we've acknowledged the land in Washington, which is close to British Columbia, but I can't talk anymore without taking a minute to acknowledge the place where I am. So I am honored to be joining you today from the traditional, unceded, and ancestral territory of Squamish Nation, specifically Nahuellicum, also known today as Bowen Island, which you are all invited to. And the reason why this is important—
party!
Well, oh, totally. I mean, we don't have any pools here, but we have the ocean, and sometimes it's warm, especially if you have a full suit. But the point is the more that I learn about inclusive practices, and the more that I learn about reconciliation and decolonizing practices, the more I realize that these really go together hand in hand. You can't do one without the other. And so I moved to the Bowen Island at the beginning of my own reconciliation journey, and invite all of you to also really look into our role as settlers on the lands that we live and work. And so it's something near and dear to my heart. And so thank you for just letting me take a minute to do that. Okay, Katie, let's do this. Now, there's a lot of questions right now around how to do inclusion. And the thing about how to do inclusion is, there's books and there's approaches and there's many things that you can do. But what I really realized is that if we don't know why we're doing it, we lose the goal. We lose the goal. And so when I was kind of exploring this for myself, and I'll tell you what happened. I went to go see Dan Habib, Dan, at the conference in Vancouver. And I was like, Dan, how do I do this? I'm working in a high school with kids and they're not included. What do I do? And he says to me, he's like, whoa, Shelley, stop. Like, why is this work important to you? And I'm like, because it's important. It's human rights. He's like, well, that's why it's important in general, but why does this matter to you specifically? And I couldn't answer it in the moment. And it really bothered me because I was like, why does this matter to me? And when I kind of thought back, because I really reflected on this and I'm just like, why does this matter? I was reminded of some key points in my life that I'm going to share with you, because I think this is a worthwhile practice for all of us to be like, why does this matter? So the first moment I'm going to take you to is grade 3. There I am. How many of you had the lasers? I think we all did. This is the 80s, people.
I couldn't get my parents to spring for the laser.
Really? I don't think we had an option. Let's be real. So there I am, my little dimple, so cute. I probably cut my own bangs. You know how we roll. But the reason why I thought of grade 3 is because I grew up in Alberta, and grade 3 was the year in Alberta where standardized exams started. Okay. So I always kind of make a joke that this isn't really a joke. It's actually probably very true. But you can get to grade 3 by being cute and funny and white. You know what I mean? Here I am. But grade 3, all of a sudden, I had to do a lot of writing and a lot of reading, and I didn't like that. And so I learned very, very quickly that if I was funny or bad, I often got out of doing the things that I didn't want to do. So I'm going to kind of just give you a little synopsis of me as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, and I apologize if any of you have me as a child in your class or in your family. So the day was March 17th. And I remember this day because this day is
St. Patrick's
Day. Yes, very good. And same in Canada. So St. Patrick's Day, March in Alberta. Okay, so it's cold and there's weather, a lot of weather. And we had, is that your birthday suit? Amazing. We were in a portable, which in, you know, those the buildings that are disconnected from the main school, which means that if you're in a portable, they have their own heating and cooling systems, right? They're not connected. So you have to, we were taught day one that like windows and doors need to be sealed because then the elements get in, like it's just a mess, okay? We learned to layer because it's usually too hot when it's supposed to be cold and too cold when it's, you know, we get it. So March 17th, we go to school, we walk into the portable, and we are horrified because we walk in and the cloakroom is filled with snow. And we're like, oh no. Someone left a window or a door open. I'm like, someone's going to be in so much trouble. And so we walk into the room and we come around the wall, and right beside my desk, the window is wide open. And I'm like, come on. I know it looks like I did it, but it wasn't me. I swear it. It's not me. I did not leave the window open. But then when you look closer at the classroom, every desk was upside down, except for mine. And they were covered in green footprints. And I'm like, it wasn't me. It was the leprechauns.
Oh my
The
God.
leprechauns.
Yeah.
Right?
Those leprechauns are sneaky.
They're sneaky. And so this was the only day of my entire schooling career that I was popular because I helped the leprechauns get in. And no, honestly, the leprechauns totally framed me. And the whole day was us trying to find the leprechauns that left the window open. Like, it was brilliant. We had so much fun. And now that I'm an educator, I know that, like, bless this teacher who probably stayed at school till 1 a.m. to make this happen for us. Do you know what I mean? Like, there were pots of rainbows, pots of gold, rainbows. Like, it was the greatest day of our life. Okay. And I felt popular that day. So, I mean, just imagine the scenario, okay? And then the door opens. And I could tell by the squeak. I was like, not today. Not today. And around the corner comes a lady who I don't know. First problem. She's like, hi, I'm here to see Shelley Moore. And I'm like, she's absent. She's not here all week. It didn't work. This lady was pulling me out. And I'm like, you
No.
To be kidding me. You're going to pull me out on the greatest day of my life. Well, I may not be very good at reading, but I am very good at being stubborn and pouting. So we leave the portable. We go into the main school, orange carpets, like brown tables, like the full 80s. We go into the small little room in the office.
The leprechauns weren't there, right?
What's that?
The leprechauns were not there.
The leprechauns were not there. I go into the tiny room with no windows. We sit down, and this lady wants me to do a writing sample. I'm like, you just took me away from what I wanted, like the greatest day, and you want me to work on the thing that I hate doing the most. Like, you're out of your mind. There's no way. And so she's just like, come on, Shelley, you can do it. And the thing about like strategies and approaches to support students who are struggling in the 80s, the only strategy we were given was
try harder,
and just think about it more. Just think about it. And I'm like, you think about it. I'm so mad. I'm like, I'm not writing. No, forget it. So she's getting frustrated, and she's just like, Shelley, you know, you love telling stories. Why don't you write a story? And I'm like, how about I tell you a story? Like, no, let me go back to the leprechauns. So then she's getting frustrated, and then she makes a big mistake. She's like, Shelley, here's the thing. You think about it. I'm going to go to the washroom. And she leaves me alone in the
Oh
room.
no, that's a terrible idea.
No, because there's a rotary telephone on the table that I only know how to use because we had one in our house. And in my defense, I think we teach a lot of children to do this when they feel like they're in trouble. So I think what anyone would do
No.
I called 911. And I was like, I am in a room alone with a stranger. She's trying to get me to do things that I don't want to do. Like, please, I need help. This is why I remember this so vividly. And then the woman on the phone got really serious, and I got scared. And then I hung up the phone, and I remember just sitting there in the room.
They'll find you. They'll find you. You can't.
Oh yeah, because it was all really quiet. And then I started to hear the commotion outside the door. I opened the door. The administrators are like, someone called 911. I'm like, it wasn't me. It was the leprechauns.
The leprechauns.
It wasn't me. Friends, they all came. Police, fire department, ambulance. If Canada had FBI, they would have come too. But you know what? It worked. I got to go back to the leprechauns. I mean, I got a stern talking to.
Positive reinforcement.
Totally. I got a stern talking to about severity of trouble. But I was like, you know what? I got to go back, and I did not have to write. So this was my life. Like, I was always like, trouble followed me, but I was never trying to be like manipulative. I hear these words, manipulative, trying to get under her skin, push buttons. I was just trying to get out of a situation that I didn't want to be in, or I knew I wouldn't be successful in, right?
You're a problem solver.
I'm a
Mhm.
This is exactly what happened. And so, you gotta go back. You gotta go back one slide. Okay. So this was exactly it. But the thing about elementary school is that at least I had a cohort, right? At least I had a community, and I felt really well liked by my teachers and my peers. So like when we talk about belonging, I did feel a sense of belonging. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I had a base. Then I had to go to junior high school. Now I go from having one class and one teacher who know me to having like 7 teachers and hundreds of kids who don't know me at all. And grade 7 was so awful. It was so awful. This is the year that I already know, because the grade 3 was the year that I was diagnosed as having a learning disability, a little sprinkle of ADHD on there. And so when I go to grade 7, I already know that I'm a little disabled. This is also the year that I get a little chubby. It's also the year that I realize I might be a little gay. And in a very conservative province that I lived in, this was pretty much like a nightmare trifecta. And I was bullied to a pulp, right? And just like the strategy for learning in the 80s was just try harder, the strategy for bullying in the 80s was we didn't see it. And so this is what happened, and it was absolutely awful. I always show this picture to capture myself in grade 7, because when I look at this picture, I just see the saddest kid. Like, I'm smiling because someone told me to. I am hiding behind my hair. Like, my eyes just look tired. Like, I look at this and I just get so sad for this kid, right? I stopped going to school in grade 7. My mom didn't even know, because nobody noticed that I wasn't there. I was marked here. I was marked present. And it kind of came to a head. I was watching volleyball in the gym at lunchtime, and someone put a firecracker in my ear. And I turned, thank goodness, because it fell out, but it burnt my shirt. I burnt my neck, lose partial hearing on my left side. And it was just like this point where I'm just like, I don't matter to anybody. My mommy is so mad. She's going to the principal and being like, what are you going to do about this? And he's like, well, we didn't see it. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm a Leo. I'm going to take matters into my own hands. So I did what I think anyone would do. I beat up my bully. I'm like, see you later, bully. No, this is not how I roll. But because there was no anti-bullying campaigns, but there was
anti-fighting rules.
Absolutely zero tolerance fighting policies. And so then I get expelled. Now, I remember when I was in the office when this was happening, and I was sitting in the chairs in the office, and I wasn't in the room with my mom and the principal. All I hear was what was said when they came out, and I'll never forget it, because the door opened, my mom comes out, the principal says to my mom, I'm sorry, but I just don't think we can meet Shelley's needs in this school. And I was thrilled. I was like, see ya later. I am out. I am never going back. My mom turned, just like lost all color in her face. And it was really conflicting for me, because I'm just like, I'm happy, but my mom is not very happy. And I was confused. And she goes to him, she's like, what do you mean she can't go? This is her school. This is her neighborhood. This is her peer group. What do you mean? What do you mean? Where's she gonna go? And I'm like, Ma, it's okay, let's go. Come on.
They'll find a
Before they
place.
change their mind. And we go in the car, we're driving home, and she's like, like when you're in the car and your parents are mad, but you don't really know why. And my mom is mad, and she's just like, her hands are like, knuckles are white. And I'm like, I'm just going to say sorry just to cover the bases. I mean, just in case. And I'm like, Mom, I'm really sorry. She slams on the brakes, pulls over her car. She's like, this is not your fault. This is not you. You have done nothing wrong here. She's like, I'm not mad at you. And I'm like, oh, I feel like you are, but I'm just going to go with it. And so I didn't, my mom's a single mom. She doesn't have time for this, right? Okay, don't turn the slide yet, because I'm going to tell you what happened next.
Okay.
So this was like in April. Okay, so I have an extra long summer. I am pumped. What I don't know is that behind the scenes, my mom is trying to get me into a different school, right? And what I don't know is that there's a new school being built, brand new school being built. And the nice thing about new schools is they don't have the history, and they don't have to deal with the, we've always done it this way. Right. So some of our most innovative educational experiences are in brand new schools. And this school was no different. So this school was the first school in Alberta that was designed as a middle school. Now, I didn't know the difference between a junior high and a middle school at the time. Right. But what this middle school was designed for was aligned to the research methods for kids between the ages of 11 and 14. And if you work with kids between the ages of 11 and 14, they're not just small high school students, which is what junior high really has become in many places. Like kids during that age group, they're figuring out their identity. They need their community, their friends are everything. And so they structured this whole school around what, like, student-centered based on research for that age range. So just some examples of some things. We had diverse classrooms. Grades 7, 8, 9 were all together. And because community was important, our cohort stayed together and subject area experts came to us. Something so simple, but we had our home base. That was our space. There was no special education department. The groups were already diverse by age. And so, like, for the first time, there were kids with disabilities who were more complex than mine, right? This was the Apple's first technology site in Canada. So we had access to technology, which was a game changer for me. And even though I don't have TikTok, maybe I'll get on that.
Yep.
And what else did they have? Everything was project oriented. You could show your learning in any way. UDL was the center. Teachers got released for collaborative time every week to work together. We were in teams like Hogwarts, but like the names were less cool. We were the blue team. Like they really centered it. And I'm going to tell you, I went from hating school. I'm going to show you my grade 8 photo. You ready? Okay, show them my grade 8 photo. Look at me. Look at my cute little cheeks. Look at my little chin. So
And like chin up.
Chin up. You know I'm wearing MC Hammer pants with that floral vest because we feel like $1 million. And I know so many people had that vest. And you feel so good in that vest. This is the first year I cut my hair, right? So I'm starting to kind of figure out my own identity. I felt so good. I felt successful. You know that research that says, can every kid name 2 adults who they feel care for them? I could name you 10. Like that, they just sound so, we were the middle of everybody's world. I didn't want to leave. I stayed after school. I went early. I couldn't get enough of this school. My mom asked me, she's like, do you like your new school? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, why? You've never said that before. And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm a teenager. But I did say this, and I remember I said, why did I have to go to any other school? And I think this really kind of gets me to this place about why this is important to me, because I think that this story is the story of so many families where in order for kids to finally get what they need, they have to not just fail. They have to actually navigate crisis and trauma. My grade 7 year was traumatic. It was awful. And for me to be able to finally be seen, to finally have access to what I needed, I had to get expelled. I had to fail all of my courses. And I'm like, why did I have to go through that experience to get this experience? And I think that when I look at what really drives me today, I'm just like, nobody, whether you're a kid or a family or a teacher or an administrator, no one should have to go through crisis and trauma to get to what they need. And so this to me, if you go to the next slide, I asked myself, what made this different? So here's my class. There they are. We're the blue team. I asked my class, I've asked myself, what made this different for me as an adult, right? And I'm like, okay, well, definitely community. I had the first sense of identity I'd ever experienced. Everything was based on relationships and support. Learning was open-ended. We could show our learning in any way. We built a Mars society in the gym. Everything was project hands-on, project learning. Diverse. They assumed the diversity instead of seeing diversity as a burden. They assumed it from the start that all the kids would be different, and they forced themselves into that model by actually even creating cross-grade groupings. It also gave kids extra time to meet standards, right? And it made it this glimpse of inclusion for me. And with this glimpse of inclusion, when you see this, you can't unsee this. So someone asked if this was a small school. It wasn't a small school. It just was one of many, right? And this is where actually a really good point, because when I started to reflect on what made this school different, the question that I had was why is this school the exception to the rule? There were hundreds of junior highs and one middle school. Why is this school? Why is this an exception? Every school could be built on these principles. Nothing here is innovative. But the part that's that got me is that people couldn't handle the change, Katie. They couldn't handle it. Because you know what? We still had standardized tests, and you know what? We did really well. We did really, really well. We did so well in sports. We did so well on exams. They couldn't handle it. People thought we were getting an unfair advantage in this school. Other schools couldn't handle it. The principal was forced out, and within 4 years, my school turned into a junior high. What? Parents were why don't they have homework? Why aren't they doing spelling tests? The parents couldn't handle it. The teachers couldn't handle it from other schools, right? So us as a cohort, and when I talked, because I'm still in contact with my teachers from those days because it was revolutionary, and they were just it was so devastating because we put our heart and souls into this, and no one could see the good. They could only see and look for what's wrong, because it would mean that it would force other people to change. It's devastating. My brother went there 4 years later and he hated it because he struggled like me, right? And so this, and I know it's devastating, and I'm telling you this incredible story, and I'm so lucky that I got into this window, but I'm just okay, now let's zoom out. Why didn't this work? Why couldn't this be sustained?
It's my gut goes to that it made people uncomfortable.
Oh,
Not
for
that
sure.
you did anything wrong, but that when you challenge the system and the status quo, it makes people uncomfortable, and they want to squirrel back to the place that they know, which is a place, again, that we talked about with this broken system that gives some people all the power and all the advantage. And sharing that makes people feel itchy, of which they should feel itchy. But that is the struggle, is that there are models for how to do this successfully.
There are.
And
They're
it's so
everywhere.
devastating. So we want to do a quick little fireside chat for everybody to really reflect on Shelley's story as we zoomed in. And at the beginning, we started off with this kind of children's book, but we are looking at a single learner's experience. And Shelley, you had this amazing experience, but everyone needs that experience.
Everybody from the start.
Zoom out here. So we're giving people some time here to post questions if you have some, to think about your own definition of why inclusion matters, or how you and your school have made inclusion happen. So put your thoughts in the chat, post on the Q&A, hook us up on social media, or if you're lucky enough to be watching this in a little viewing party, then you can just chat about it as well. So we'll put this 2 minutes on here just to kind of let you reflect before we transition to a little bit of a zoom out. But Shelley, if you had to answer that question, what would be one concrete step that schools could make to make inclusion happen?
Oh man, it's so hard because like I want to jump to the practical. You know what I mean? Like blow up the timetable. You know what I mean? Create cross-grade groupings. Like I would love to say that, but I think like before any of that happens, I think we have to embrace innovation. We have to be open to change. We have to not fear it. We have to be like, you know what? This is possible, but we have to trust each other. We have to create a community of staff, right? Because the other thing I often get is, well, this can't happen. We don't have funding for it. And I'm like, this school didn't receive any more funding than the school down the street, right? But it's looking at how do we reflect on what's happening? What are we doing because it's good? And what are we doing because that's what's been done? And being able to let go of some things. I think that's what I would say. How do we do this? We have to look and start letting go of some stuff.
I think we have to change the statement from what is good for adults and
Yes.
talk about what is flipping good for kids, because a lot of things that we're doing right now in classrooms might be good for adults,
Oh,
but
100%.
school is for children, not for adults. My colleague Mirko Chardonnay says, school is for kids.
I
Like,
know.
why are we allowing adults to put up all of these walls and barriers
And
that
you know
are
what I think?
preventing
I think there's this fear, Katie, that this is too much work. I think there's this fear. And so adults put up these boundaries because they're like, we need a manageable workload, which I get. But I think what they're realizing is that this is actually not just more effective, it's more efficient. Like making these shifts help teachers feel more supportive, help teachers feel less exhausted. And so I think that we forget teachers do have a role to play in this. And this isn't just about doing more with less. This is about doing different with more and looking at how do we optimally use resources, because teachers do matter, but not at the expense of what works for kids.
Exactly. And the other thing is too, is like people are working really hard right now to not have great results. What we are doing, the system as it is operating is producing the current results, which is that nationally we're looking at less than 40% of kids, who are learning at grade level. We are working too hard to not have a greater impact on kids. And it goes so much deeper than just academic content, but student social emotional learning and how students report their feelings of belonging, and are they challenged and are they supported? And again, when people say like, we don't want to change, I'm like, but there is so much evidence that what we are doing is not
working. Not even working for teachers either.
That feels yucky.
It's not working for anybody.
Okay, Michelle just came up with your new book title, which is called Different But More, spelled like your last name.
What? So smart.
Oh my gosh, I love a good pun. Okay, so
good.
everyone has a Shelley in their lives, and let's do a quick zoom out now to think about some of the systems work that needs to shift in order to support every single student. So this right here is an image of the things that are really important in Washington State as they build a multi-tiered system. And we want to create every single classroom and school and district so that we have incredibly strong leadership, that we are making decisions based on what students need. We are looking at student outcomes, we are looking at student work, and we are making decisions for kids in the moment, just in time, based on the evidence that we have. And to do this, we have to bring in the whole village. We have to partner and engage families and students and give them a voice in their own learning, and make sure that our schools are really steeped into our communities. Some students will need additional support. I cannot say enough that additional is the key word, that we are not looking to supplant or pull out Shelley from Leprechaun Day, but how do we layer supports so that students are always concluded? And ultimately, we have to do what provides us with evidence on our impact. And so that is just an overall visual. And when we look at that, we go, okay, so like, how do you operationalize that? Well, lucky for you, I love analogies, and I have a couple of different analogies to help you better understand the layers of support. Now, how do we talk about layers without talking about layer cake? So I've given you a couple of options here. So feel free to send a text to someone you love with the cake that brings you to your come from place, wherever that place is in the world. For me, it is carrot cake. My mom makes carrot cake like a meal. There are walnuts and coconut and pineapple. Shelley, what is a dessert that reminds you of your come from place?
Oh my goodness, cheesecake.
Cheesecake. Do you like the strawberries on top, or are you just going straight up?
Cherry cheesecake.
Cherry cheesecake.
My
My mama used to make those little ones and like the cupcakes where you had the Nilla wafers and the cheesecake. Oh my gosh. So look at right now the waterfall. We have crazy cake. Teresa, we need more. What is crazy cake? I need that recipe. Black bottom cake, blueberry pie, so many amazing things. So I want you to plant that cake or that dessert in your head, because I promise I'm going somewhere with it. When we think about this dessert, I want you to think about the layers of my carrot cake. And when we dive in, you're going to think of those layers as the 3 layers of support in a multi-tiered system. Now, a multi-tiered system requires all students to be in that tier 1 universal bake layer, because you know what? It is not a layer cake anymore if you just cut the middle layer out and throw someone a sheet cake. You need the additional layers for it to be layer cake. So you all have a visual now, and maybe that visual for Elizabeth is like a triple layer banana cake. Amy has like a triple decker chess pie. Get your image in your head, but it's going to be beautiful and it's going to be 3 layers. Now, the regulation from the federal guidance says that the type of supports that students need cannot supplant, cannot replace access to universal instruction. You cannot pull students out of what is rightfully theirs in tier 1 to provide them with the additional support that they need. Okay, fine. It happens literally all the time. So let's dive into an analogy of why that's problematic. Now, my grandmother, French Canadian, called her Meme, was very good at dealing out threats. And one of her favorite threats started with, if you keep eating all that sugar, you know, and culturally, we always have somebody who is in our ear reminding us of the perils of sweets. Now, I want you all in the chat, if you're willing, to complete that sentence. I'll tell you how my meme completed it. But baking for me is not really a relative strength. So my birthday cakes for my children basically are layered trifles, which is, if you are not a baker, this is the recipe for you. You like make a box cake and you rip it up. And then it's like 3 layers of like pudding, cake, whipped cream, repeat, candy on top. Hello. And if Meme sees that, you know what she's going to say? Oh, Karen heard if you keep eating that sugar, you'll die from joy. And now, Karen, I am literally, oh, who got it? Ingrid. My meme would go, if you keep eating all that sugar, your teeth will rot. And then that bird, who was like one of the great loves of my life, would take out the dentures and say it was because she ate too much sugar, which is like, I mean, that's 1970 grandparenting. Like, if you don't want this to happen here. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, like Meme, like they didn't have toothbrushes then. Let's like bring it down a level. So again, I want you to think we have cake, we have, you know, all this stuff going on with our teeth, but worry not, Shelley, because I have a continuum of support of dental care, multiple tiers of dental care. Now look at this love right here. Look at those sweet little teeth. Now, would you say, Shelley, that this lovely adolescent right here, even though that he has braces, he should probably still get to go to the dentist?
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Now, everyone should go to the dentist, right? That's tier 1 dental care.
Tier 1. Go to the dentist.
Back. Everyone goes to a general education classroom, right? Yep. Everyone goes to tier 1. Everyone goes to the dentist. Now, would you say even all of these kids should go to the dentist?
I think that's would be very equitable. Yes.
My watch even answered. The watch is like, I didn't get it. No, I don't get it either.
Yes.
Watch. Because
Siri
it's
says
baloney.
everybody goes to the dentist.
So, okay, close your eyes if you can't see the teeth pictures. But here we go, right? All of these children need something additional, right? They don't need this instead of, right? So we have the lovely girl in the upper left-hand corner, and like she has braces, but she still goes to the dentist, and if she needs cavities filled, she can get it. And if she needs a root canal, she can, right? So all of these different tiers, but they're always supplemental. And what you'll also notice is that when you start getting some additional supports, they don't all look the same. They're incredibly individualized based on data. What does the X-ray say that this kid needs right now? And let's provide it to them. And if those are multiple things at the same time, absolutely, so be it. Because every single child deserves access to general dentistry, where there is a checkup and there is cleaning, and they provide you with a toothbrush and they floss your teeth, and they do universal data collection. Right? They do x-rays, they take that long, kind of scary metal thing, and they're like, is that really a hole? Yes, it's a hole, doctor. And then the doctor says, okay, no matter what, we're still going to meet the needs of this patient, but we also need to have this kid see an orthodontist and an oral surgeon. And I need to provide some support because I have to fill some cavities, but never would this be instead of. And what ends up happening, which is an incredible misconception about special education, is that in tier 3, if you look at the sweet little baby up in the top, the cleft palate, which you would say needs tier 3 intervention, it's not a tier 3 kid. It's a tier 3 surgical procedure. It's a service that is necessary. That same child goes on to have braces, if you look at the bottom right. But when a child is recovering from a cleft palate surgery, the oral surgeon might reach out to the dentist and say, you're going to have to treat this kid a little bit differently. Let me give you some really specific advice. That's specially designed instruction. So even though you need a special educator to design specially designed instruction, a general educator can implement the specially designed instruction. And the power of this system is when everyone shares data, collaborates, works together, and says, we're going to meet the needs of this kid whenever they need it, without pulling them out from what is rightfully theirs. So you're starting to go, well, when does that all happen? We have to blow up scheduling. We have to blow up the way that we put kids in classes. We have to blow up the way that teachers basically have one small group of students, as opposed to recognizing that every student in the school deserves access to the best that we have available. So we're going to get into that in a minute, but I want you to spend a couple of minutes just thinking about how this analogy works in explaining to someone why we need inclusion. So Shelley, how does the dental analogy help you kind of better understand why it's so important that everyone gets tier 1 and the kids who need more get more, but you can't get instead of, because as Meme will say, your teeth will rot.
Well, and I think like one thing that really stood out here is that sometimes what I see is, well, we don't have enough toothbrushes. We don't have enough toothbrushes for everyone, so let's not give them to anyone and wait and see who needs it. And so this is often what I see at that tier 1 level. It's not universal. It's a wait and see kind of gatekeeper model, which then what happens is it bumps up a whole bunch of kids to receive tier 2 instruction, and it overloads the orthodontists, right? And so
my gosh, it's so good. It's so good.
It overloads. And then if there's no orthodontist, you know what I mean? Being like, oh, well, we don't have enough braces, so let's just see who needs it the most. And then we overload the surgeons because it gets so backed up because no one is receiving the universal support. But if everyone has access to a toothbrush, right? And I think like, you know, what happens is it's this, because I love doing this also with the metaphor of the alarm clock. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't have enough alarm clocks for everyone, so let's just wait and see who doesn't need the, you know. But if we follow a wait and see model, we're relying on failure.
Yep.
We're relying on kids not being successful. And so rather than that, let's look at like, what does everybody need to be successful? Done. That's it. And so that our advocacy isn't we need more oral surgeons. The advocacy is we need more toothbrushes. Because I can't tell you, because oral surgeons are very expensive. But if we keep waiting because we don't have enough toothbrushes, that's where the resources go. Instead of being, wait a second, back up the truck. We wouldn't need the oral surgeons as much if we were advocating for the universal foundation. And it doesn't mean, like, because there's another rumor out there that says, oh, you can't meet the need, or UDL is going to meet the needs of anyone. We don't need the oral surgeons anymore. I'm like, no, we still need oral surgeons. That's not what we're saying. But the reason why RTI, or tiered layers of supports, is a triangle is because that tier 3 individualized interventions are for a very small amount of people. They're very, very small amounts of people. But if we're not providing the layers before it, that amount of people is going to grow and grow and grow to make us think we need more oral surgeons, but we don't. We need more toothbrushes. And so it also affects how we advocate for how we use resources. And so in classrooms, what I think is one of the most important toothbrushes we can advocate for is collaboration, right? Like, it makes such a huge difference to support teachers to work together. And, you know, if you look at research, like, that is going to support that universal design process for so many kids. But that's not always what gets advocated for. We get advocated for, I need another EA. I need another really expensive assessment. I need another resource teacher. Like, we go to, like, I need an educational psychologist. I mean, yes, we need those people and we need those resources, but we need a whole lot more before that, or everyone's going to look like they need an oral surgeon.
And then you're going to be like my meme, taking out your teeth,
Taking out your teeth.
Of Alka-Seltzer to clean them off.
Yeah.
So let's now break this apart, because we have MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, and everything that we just talked about is the multi-tiers. Now, you could list a bazillion reasons, a bazillion barriers for truly making that work right now in your schools. And so what a multi-tiered system of support is it zooms out and says, what do we have to change on the outside when you're looking at these 3 drivers? And I'll explain what those are in a minute. But how do we build the competency of all teachers to be able to meet the needs of all students? How do we make sure that we have leadership that is willing to challenge the status quo and shift the resources and make decisions to make sure there's shared responsibilities for all students? Leadership also has to include family and community engagement. And then there's lots of technical pieces that we need to adjust, like the schedule and having really high quality technology and really innovative, flexible curriculum and all of those things. Those are implementation drivers. And too often districts kind of zoom into the MT without thinking about what has to change at the systems level to shift the mindset of everyone who works there, the collective skill set and the collective efficacy of all adults who are in the building. And then also, what do we need to do differently as far as leadership and technology? And we have to work in some ways from the outside in, because when we're always looking at the student who's in front of us, we're like, well, I need another oral surgeon and I need more wire for the braces. And at some point you have to zoom out and say, we have a toothbrush problem. And so when we think about MTSS, the reason we're calling this zooming in and out of inclusive practice is that this work is about children. And sometimes I hear myself and I feel like I'm falling short when I'm talking about systems. But if we don't change the system, we can't serve your babies. And it becomes the luck of the draw, where a bunch of teachers are just hoping and vying, or a bunch of parents rather are hoping and vying that certain kids will end up in certain classrooms. And that does not an inclusive system make. And when we think about this work, those drivers, remember that image that I showed you of the mountain, the drivers is the recipe for making big changes. And so when we talked about how do you meet the needs of a single child, you build relationships. You talk to their grownups about what they need. You provide options and choices. But to make sure that that's a guarantee, you have to zoom back out and make a little recipe card. And just like if we were going to make this cake, you have to go into the pantry and say, what ingredients do we have already? And what ingredients do we not have yet? We do not have a bunch of leaders who truly value and believe in inclusion, who believe that every kid is capable of success. We don't have a culture where we're consistently looking at evidence and impact to make decisions, as opposed to what we have always done and what is comfortable. Oftentimes, we don't truly engage families. We might invite families in, or we might involve families, but true engagement is shared decision-making about people's children, providing a continuum of supports to all students when they need them. Special education does not live in a tier. So special education is not tier 3, right? Special education is a tier 1 service, of which some students will need additional supports, just as students who may not have a disability. And so we really have to think differently about what we value in this system. Do we value impact on students? And if we do, what type of impact do we value? Academic, social, emotional, sense of belonging. And are we measuring what matters? And if we're not seeing growth, we have to build a different set of skills. We have to think about a different set of technology, and we might have to blow up the schedule, just like your middle school did, to make sure that we're having that desired impact with all children. So when we come back to this in Washington, it starts to make so much more sense of the foundation of this mountain, which are those multi-tiers, is really thinking about the shifts that need to happen at the system level to build the capacity, the leadership, and make sure you have everything that you need to do the most important job that we have, which is ensuring that kids are successful. And right now they aren't yet, but they can be. So when we think about this work, you'll see that this cascading system is that every single thing that we do, way zoomed out, looking at that globe, has to ultimately cascade down and demonstrate better outcomes for each and every single child. And the children who we most need to focus on are those who have been historically excluded and oppressed and underserved, which are our students of color, our students who have disabilities, our multilingual learners, our students with economic disadvantage, and our Indigenous students. So it is absolutely critical that we are looking at the decisions and the actions that we make and their ultimate impact on kids who have been underserved. And Beverly Daniel Tatum, who's a great scholar in this work, always says, the work is not about intent. We can't talk about what we're trying to do. We have to talk about what we're doing. And there are too many kids with holes in their teeth walking around who don't have access to a dentist, an orthodontist, and an oral surgeon. And that's why we have to shake this system up. So now it is time for Shelley and I's fireside chat.
Fireside chat.
This is when we're going to invite Lindsay back, and you're going to throw us some questions, and we're really going to go big ambiance here. And we're just going to chat for a little bit here about some of the questions that have come up.
Yes, thank you so much, you guys. It has been enthralling, honestly. I have actually tried to organize some of the questions into sort of topics so we can answer more than one. One of the questions that we're getting over and over again has to do with changing mindsets or motivating teachers to want to change. A lot of questions around kind of, people seeing things as old-fashioned, your kids, SPED kids, or seeing, that desire to collaborate. So how do we really get them to focus on the guests at our pool party and not the host of the pool party?
Well, I can go first for this one because I've given this answer a couple times.
Yes.
Of course, I want to shift people's mindsets. That goes without saying. Mm-hmm. As a school and district leader, which I was, I do not have the power to change people's mindsets, but I do, as a leader, have the power to change their practice. Inclusive practice is required by educator evaluation in the state of Washington. And there should not be a teacher who is proficient who is refusing to serve all students. It doesn't align. And one of the things that I say, and believe me, I am pro teacher. I love teachers. I was a teacher. You cannot have a country with 35% of kids learning at grade level and 99% of teachers proficient and exemplary. It is simply not possible. And it is an insult to the amazing teachers who are doing this work. And I am not saying that we go off the rails and start saying everybody's unsatisfactory. But when did it become such a damn bad thing to say, you need support? You don't yet have the skill set to meet the needs of all kids, but as a system, we can help you. We will support you because you will teach all students. So you don't have to believe or agree with inclusive practice, but I will evaluate you on it. And you need very brave, very strong leaders to begin to have that conversation. And that really strong leadership is a part of a multi-tiered system. Because when I talk to leaders and they'll say, this teacher just won't teach all kids, I'm like, let me see their evaluation. Oh, they're proficient. That's ironic because I don't think that you can be a proficient teacher in standard 2, which is teaching all students, if you refuse to teach all students. Mic drop. Shelley, you're up.
Well, it's fascinating to listen to because like part of me is just like, oh man, I wish it was like that here, but we don't have the same type of teacher accountability in place. I know that like in Canada, education is provincial and territorial. And so it's just, we're not evaluated in the same way, right? And so we can't tell teachers what to do. And it makes it really tricky sometimes. And it's very hard. I had to go on a stress leave once because I hadn't yet learned the lesson that you can't change people's mind. Okay. And so I think that there's a balance between like policy and mandate for sure in shifting practices. I also think that needs to pair with the responsibility of systems to provide professional development so that teachers know what to do. Because if we only rely on policy and mandates, people start to get resentful and they push back in ways that are very detrimental to our kids. But at the same time, I can totally appreciate that there are teachers out there who are very, very well-meaning, who have just never seen this before. They've never seen a student with Down syndrome in a secondary academic class. They do not know what to do. In order to admit that they don't know what to do, they need to be vulnerable in a school that they maybe don't feel safe in, right? And so I think that there has to be, I don't know if you've seen that, like, that graphic where it's like you got to push people and support them along the way. And so like it's a balance of both of those things. But at the same time, I think one of the most powerful things we can do is show people what's possible. And that's where you're going to get the people who are on the edges looking, being like, what's that happening over there? People are looking like they're not working as hard. This looks easier than what I'm doing. They have to see it to believe it. And there's a lot, probably most teachers I know who haven't seen it. They have not seen inclusion. They don't know what it looks like. They don't know what it means. And so, and one way to do that is to go with your goers. Find the people in your district that are doing this work and blow it up. Show it, highlight it, show people what it looks like. Like I see some people here like, where are these schools? Where can we see them? But you know what? You can even like, there's pockets in every school where this work is happening, but we have to talk to each other. We have to trust each other. We have to like support each other to be able to do this work because it's scary and it's change and we have to take risks to do this work. And so I wish we had more mandates in Canada. But I also know that even just with the mandates and policy, it's not enough to shift a mindset. We also need to create the space for people to be vulnerable.
And what I will tell you, Shelley, is although our systems have the potential to be used that way, they're often not.
Yeah.
That, the educator evaluation has become something that I think is really problematic for teachers, that there are repercussions of not being proficient.
Right.
And there are many teachers who intend to do right by kids who are not proficient yet in inclusive practice. And instead of having conversations, having radical candor and saying, I care too much about you and I care too much about kids to not say something about the fact that your practice needs to change.
Yeah.
And I've had that conversation many times, and 90% of the time it goes over really, really well. Just that people don't even want to bring up.
Yeah. It's a very risky place.
Yeah. Right. The work of Kim Scott with Radical Candor says we're like a culture of ruinous empathy is like, I want to challenge you, but I care about you. So I'm going to sugarcoat this and be like, oh, maybe you could try it. And it's like, Brene Brown says, clear is kind. You're struggling with these students. However, there's support, right?
And that's
I will
the part.
your class, so you go and observe someone else. I can send you to a conference, right? But it starts with the recognition is that you need to lean in and change. And I do not blame teachers, honest to goodness. I do not blame teachers when they're unwilling to change and they've been given proficient or exemplary for 30 years. What on earth?
How would they even know they need to change?
Well, it's basically the leprechaun scenario, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want that kid. I don't want that kid. And then you take the kid out. It's like, oh, I know my strategy now. And we have to disrupt that narrative and be like, you do not choose who is in your class. And if you feel like you don't have the skill set yet, I love the honesty. I love the vulnerability. Let's come together and let's create an awesome plan. And every teacher can and will be successful. But there's a lot of tiptoeing around lagging skills in teaching. And as soon as you let someone know, there's a much more efficient, better way to do this. It can't feel good to not have the skill set. Let's lean in. But again, that I think is a leadership decision that needs to happen.
And I think that it's very easy. I think it's very, very easy to blame a teacher, but if they don't have the universal supports around them, if they don't have the targeted interventions around them. So I think like we could do this at a collegial level as well, and the adult level, to just be like, if we are seeing an adult is struggling, whether a support staff or a leader, an administrator, a teacher, like, how are we also looking at the conditions around them to say, how do these conditions need to change so that they can be successful? And so, applying all of our conversations that we're having about kids right now to how do we create community and belonging and high expectations for teachers as well? Because I do believe that people go into education because we believe we want kids to be successful. I have to believe that at its base, right? And so then how do we create conditions around educators to provide them the different levels of support so that they can also be able to do their job? Because at the end of the day, I think that's what people are just trying to do, Yeah.
And again, the MTSS lens is that teachers don't have what they need to do it, but we can't just keep pretending like everything in the system is going really well. Like one of the most amazing things teachers can say to me is like, I'm struggling with this kid and I don't know what to do. I'm like, give me a hug. Like, I think that is the bravest thing that a teacher can say. Not the kid can't do it. Not I don't want the kid here. Not you need to send them somewhere else. But to honestly say, I want to do right by this kid and I don't know what to do. And
we can work with that.
Right. Anyone who says that to me, tears of joy. I will do anything for a teacher, but we have to make that conversation the norm.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's okay to not know what to do, but let's work with it, Okay, we talk all day.
All right.
What's that?
I said, what else you got, Lindsay?
Well, I got some good ones. There's also a lot of questions around behaviors, specific student behaviors. If a student's unable to kind of keep up or shows frustration, or, the argument that, this one kid is disrupting the majority. How do they kind of, really help explain that for other people and make that case for inclusion? There's just a lot of questions around behaviors and how to address that with teachers.
I can start with that one. Friends, behavior, challenging behavior, anxiety, disengagement, non-attendance. These are all indicators that something's not working for a kid. And all of those are little red flags that something's not working around them. And in any of those moments, I understand that maybe someone needs a break. Maybe they need to take a walk. Maybe we need a plan B because, you know, they didn't have breakfast that morning and they're, you know, like, I think it's absolutely okay to have plan Bs. It's absolutely okay to have plan Bs. It's okay to take breaks because our home base is still with our peers. The problem is when kids leave and never come back. The problem is when plan B becomes plan A. The problem is when we put the plan to be solved is how do we fix challenging behavior? We have to understand that challenging behavior is a symptom of a need not getting met. And so this is where that zoom out comes in, right? How do we zoom out and say what's happening around the student? Because, you know, for every kid that's struggling, there's going to be 5 more that are not very far behind. And we can get very, very caught up in what we see without actually digging deeper to be like, what's actually happening? And it's very hard and we need to support each other to do it. But I think probably one of the biggest frustrations that I hear is when I hear inclusion can't happen because of challenging behavior. And I'm like, that's not a reason. We need a plan.
I would also add that one of the best things I ever did for my teaching career was co-teaching.
Yes.
And that the best form of professional development I ever received in my whole life was being full-time with a special educator all day. Special educators are like the most magical human beings. My first day with my co-teacher, her name was Betsy. I was very proud of myself in 7th grade that I used to like give a throwback to kindergarten and would get those blow up like letter A, you know, Mr. Letter A, Mrs. Letter B, right? And I'd blow them up. And then all the vocab words that week would begin with that letter. Right. And it was like a fun thing that they knew I was like messing around, like, oh, Mrs. A is here bringing the vocab. And they'd be like, oh, Novak. Right. So, you know, after teaching for a while, I like love this. I pick random words and I like do it. Right. And kids are like, I hate vocabulary. It's so stupid. And I'd be like, the behaviors. And so the first time we sat together to start co-planning, right. Because I, you know, was like, we wanted to pilot it. She's like, I was like, so we're going to do vocab. She was like, you're not doing that anymore. And I was like, I'm sorry. She's like, oh, no, you're not doing that. Adorable. But like, let me teach you a little bit about like language-based learning disabilities and why we're not going to do that anymore. And like, you can put them up. That's super cute. But like, no, that's not how we're doing vocab. And I was like, okay. And I loved her. But anyway, she taught me about the functions of behavior.
Yes.
Which are essentially, if you're seeing behavior, it's because a student has some unmet needs for attention, or they're trying to escape something, or they're trying to get something. It feels really freaking good sometimes to throw like
those sensory overloads, let me tell you.
Like sometimes I do, right? So one of the most important things I can say is number one, understand the functions of behavior. It just gives you such a better view of what kids are trying to communicate. Because if a student is trying to avoid something, and you know that universal design would know that that would be a barrier, and that if it was not a firm goal, that there could be like another alternative.
Another way to go there. Yeah.
The other thing that I love is that behavior is not meant to be fixed. It is meant to decrease in intensity, frequency, and duration. And sometimes I felt like as I continue to raise my amazing and spirited daughter who has complex ADHD, sometimes I feel like, gosh, things aren't getting better. And the psychologist that we work with would say, just make a note how long it happens. And I'm like, it's still happening every day, but it was like 30 minutes, and then it was 26 minutes, and then it was 15 minutes. And I'm like, it's still happening every day, but the duration and the intensity and over time. And so our students who have some pretty significant complex behaviors, which my own child does, it puts it in such a beautiful perspective when I'm like, what do you need from me right now? How do I make this better? And then just notice over time how it does decrease duration, intensity, frequency. And that's a win. That is data on whatever you're doing.
Well, and then you're seeing the growth, right? And that's another shift that we're talking about, right? Like some kids may never be fixed in the areas that we're putting so many resources into, right? But instead, like, how are we helping them grow? How are we helping them navigate?
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Yay. But I also love, like, it takes a community to support kids, right? Like, I also, you know, having access to special educators to be able to have these conversations, just be like, hey, like, I love this. What can you add? And it's that partnership that I think is just so valuable.
Yeah. The long story short is that she's like, what you need to do for vocabulary is actually teach the academic words you're using all the time, like analyze and justify and closely read. And if something is so important that you need it to understand a text, then you will provide visuals and we will act it out. And you will not be like, these are 10 really fun SAT words that happen to begin with A. So yeah. And
I love it. I love it.
Again, like it was the best experience. I did it for like the last 5 years of my teaching career. I would never go back ever.
But it also like says like, you have to be able to trust that person to have that hard conversation. Like it comes back to that. You know what I mean? Like you got to be okay with receiving feedback, which is hard for a lot of people.
All of you here who are co-teachers, may I remind you, you're an orthodontist, not a dental assistant. But you don't work for the dentist, okay? You are an orthodontist. You are amazing. Like, I think that sometimes I work with special educators that'll be like, well, I just like, you know, I sit in the back of the room and then do what the general education teacher tells me to do. And it's like, what a waste of brilliance and funding that a well-functioning co-teaching team that co-plans, co-teaches, and co-assesses using the different approaches really flexibly can absolutely change the life of kids that they serve.
I love that. It's a good way to look at it. Yay!
Speaking my language. All right, we only have a couple more minutes for the chat, but we do have some questions that I think bridge what we were just talking about that I just think we might want to be really explicit about. There's some questions about are life skills classrooms or structured learning environments still considered best practice? Are they in line with best practice? There's some questions about, you know, how do we work toward getting away from a resource room? Is there a role for this resource room? So I think people are sort of struggling with those systemic, you know, placement pieces. And I think it'd be nice to hear just some real like specifics.
Hey, Katie.
Hey, Shelley.
When I say life skills to you, what do you think of?
I think everyone freaking needs life skills.
Right. When I say coffee carts, recycling, making muffins, what do you think of? I'll tell you what I think of.
The first job that you get when you're 16.
I think of 1950s housewife skills.
Okay.
And I think that it's really, really important to know that the life skills classes that are happening are not actually life skills classes. They are classes of what people think that some kids are capable of, and they're just insulting. Mm-hmm. We want to talk about life skills. Let's talk about life skills. Let's talk about literacy. Let's talk about numeracy. Let's talk about collaboration, problem solving. Let's talk about being critical. Let's talk about being creative. Let's talk about life skills. This is a part. I'm going to tell you a quote that a parent said to me once. Social emotional skills, kindness, empathy. Like a parent said to me once, I was in a high school and trying to move away from a life skills program. And I get it, like well-meaning people, I get it. But a parent came to me and I'll never forget it. She said, Shelley, I am terrified for my kid to come to this school. And I'm like, why? She's like, I am so scared that my kid is going to come to school and their entire educational program is going to be doing chores for their peers. And I never forgot that. And she's like, you have my kid for 5 years. I have my kid for 65 years plus. Like, I can teach them how to make sandwiches. I can teach them how to do laundry. I can't teach them how to have an authentic friendship. I can't teach them to read. I can't teach them how to access curriculum at a level that's interesting. I can't teach those things. And so if we really want to talk about life skills, let's talk about what everybody needs. And there's a lot of conversations happening in curriculum because a lot of kids don't have those skills, like actual life skills. And so there's conversations happening around and just reforming curriculum in general to include things like competencies, 21st century learning skills. And when you actually look at what those are, all kids can do those things. So yeah, let's talk about life skills, because there actually hasn't been research to support life skills since 1974.
Mhm.
And it's happening very often because people don't know what else to do. They're not presuming competence because it's something that's always been done. Because we hear the students love it, the parents love it. And I'm just like, what do they love about it? Do they love the community? Do they love being successful? Do they love being out and about in the school? Because you can still hold on to those elements without being painted in a corner, because other kids see that they're recycling. Other teachers see that they're doing the copy cart, and then it reinforces that belief that that's all that they're capable of. And it's super, super problematic, my friends.
When I piloted co-teaching at the middle school that I was at, we received a bunch of funding from the Gates Foundation to actually eliminate programs. So we had a program for everything, right? A program for autism, a program for life skills, a program for learning language-based learning disabilities, a program for social emotional learning called TLC, a program, right? And it was kind of like, this is bananas. We have so many special educators because there are so many programs with just a handful of kids. You know, what happens if we have teachers who are like, I will absolutely teach all kids. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of how I learned about universal design for learning, actually, because that was a part of piloting that program, was having CAST come out into classrooms and provide us like with in-time professional development, videotape our teaching, reflect on it with us. So it was this amazing experience. But when we included all students, so in the same class, students who would have traditionally been in different programs, mm-hmm. we did not modify curriculum. Mm-hmm. We provided so many different options and choices. We were all working towards the same goals. But again, the shift required a lot of amending IEPs, a lot of home visits to parents' houses saying, your children will be successful with me. That I know that seems really scary, but of course, if it's not having a positive impact, and every single student stayed in the class, but it was like an investment in an entire shift to say kids are capable of doing this work together. And the classroom looked very different than many classrooms continue to look today, but the work is possible. Students are capable, teachers are capable. We just have to set that expectation.
And I think like there's a lot of programs that have really great things happening in them. And I know they're not all coffee carts, okay? Like there's some really great things, but what I really want to encourage people to think is to look at your program and say, what's good here? Because there's some really great things that are happening, but why do they have to happen in a space separate from everybody else, right? And so I think like part of this conversation is, if this is something that's really great, let's do this with everybody. I know that we had one program at our school that was supporting students with work experience, and they were getting facilitated support so that they could get jobs when they left school, which is really, really important. But I'm like, but there might be other kids that also could benefit from that. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's make that as an elective for everybody, right? Like, and like, there's often questions around like, there was one where there was a student who was talking about, well, they love recycling. It's a motivator for them. I'm like, great, make it an option for any kid who loves recycling, and don't do it during instructional time. Because if we're saying that it's more important for a student to recycle than to go to math, we're communicating that they're not capable of math. And I know this is going to take a long time to shift, but we have to start having some of these hard conversations, because separating students based on what we think they can do and it not be accurate is a very, very dangerous assumption. We've seen that in the literature over and over and over again.
So we have a lot of systems work to do, and we've started talking about these big shifts at a systems level. Now let's zoom back in for 5 minutes to the student perspective, because this is why all of us do the work that we do. And Shelley, take it away.
Okay. Well, I mean, I see we're running short on time, and I was going to tell you a whole long story, but I'm going to make it short because there's a takeaway that I want you to all put in your pocket. Okay. I wanted to shift to, Shelley as a student, but now Shelley as a teacher. because my experience as a student, it gave me that glimpse of what's possible. And so when I go into all of my jobs and I'm like, I want to carry this with me. And it was a very hard realization when I went into the school system, and I worked both in America and in Canada, in different places. And I realized that this didn't happen. Like this vision of inclusion that I felt as a kid that saved me was not what was happening. And one, when I realized this was a high school that I worked in, which was my second job. I was a support teacher for students about 16 to 18 students. No, Carrie, Canada is not part of America, but we're neighbors. But having students like attend their neighborhood school, like that was a move forward for sure. But like looking at, okay, when I got to this high school, the kids were in the corner of the building. Like I was told to go look for my classroom, and it wasn't a classroom, it was a wing. And here I am meeting these incredible kids. And I was like, why are we in the corner? Like, why aren't we together? Like, why can't we have a community and identity and relation? Like, why are these kids in the corner? So I was like, okay, enough is enough. So the first year I lay low. The second year I go to a staff meeting. And I put my name on the agenda, and I tell my high school, I'm like, we're coming out.
I'm coming out.
We're coming
I want
out.
the world to know.
And I would love to tell you that this went well, but it didn't. It didn't go well at all. People were very upset with me because it was that the support for the teachers wasn't there. And so I went to the bookstore. This is my favorite part of the story is I went to the bookstore to try and figure out how I could change people's minds. And I buy this book. It says Dealing with Difficult People. And the first line of the book says, if you bought this book, you're the difficult person. And it like took the wind right out of my sails, because I realized that not one person can do this, and you can't just force people to do this, right? You can't just force people to be inclusive. You have to support them. You have to show them what's possible. You have to make it easy. You have to make it safe. And so I went to my principal to tell him my epiphany. And he told me a metaphor that I want to leave you with today. He said, Shelley, I want you to imagine that you're a bus driver. What does your bus look like? I'll go to the next slide. What does your bus look like? Oh, go to the next slide. And I'm like, it is a rainbow polka dot double-decker bus. He's like, okay. He's like, you are driving this bus. He's like, let's call it the inclusion bus of love. He's like, you're driving this bus. And I see you trying to get people on the bus. I'm like, yeah, they need to get on the bus. It's the law. And he's like, well, and people don't want to get on the bus. They're fighting and kicking. And I'm like, yes, they are. And it's exhausting. He's just like, okay, but here's the thing. This is what I've noticed. You're out there trying to drag people on this bus, kicking and screaming. And while you're doing that, no one is driving. And I'm like, there's no one to drive, Lauren. He's like, see, this is where you're wrong. And he brought out the school staff list, and he highlighted all these people. He's like, these people are on the bus, but you're not focusing on them. He's like, leave the fighters, get on the bus, drive the bus, make that bus fun, karaoke, Corona snacks, you make that bus fun, get people to look at that bus because their legs are tired. They do want to ride. And I'm like, but what if they don't get on the bus? He's like, but this is what you need to remember is that a bus is on a route. Buses will always be back. People will always have another chance to get on the bus. But if we're only focusing on the people who don't want to get on, no one's driving. And I am now making all of you a bus driver. And yes, there is
amazing full circle story. Guess
Totally.
who? College bus driver.
No, of course you were.
Wildcat Transit, UNH.
Woo!
I drove
So
that
we need to be bus drivers. And we need to know exactly, the bus will be back. Make that bus safe, make it fun, because people want to get on. Even the people that don't want to get on, they're looking. So make it fun, and you are all a bus driver. I'm gonna send you all little licenses.
No, I love driving a bus. It's so bad when my
it's so
kids and I go back up to the University of New Hampshire to visit. I'm like, we have to go buy the bus guide. And he's like, oh my. So I proudly wear a UNH bus driver sweatshirt.
Yes.
I'll wear it next time if you're lucky. I'll put some sparkles. I'll wear my rainbow Kelly Novak fanny pack. Everything will be right with the world.
Yes.
So Shelley, as a final word here, before we do our final poll and have the project team talk about our sequel, what can we learn from baby Shelley?
Baby Shelley. I think baby Shelley, what worked for me was relationships, rapport. What worked for me was those people who saw what I brought, not what I was missing, what my strengths were. I think teacher Shelley. Are we on teacher Shelley yet? On teacher Shelley. I think what really made a difference for me was realizing that we can't do this work by ourselves. This is a community goal. And there are things that people can do at every level of education. But what I want everyone to leave with today is that it's also not a readiness model. We don't have to wait for all of the systems and structures to be in place to make a change tomorrow. So that's what I would have told myself when I was a baby teacher, is just start somewhere. If everyone did one little thing, education would change for kids across this nation.
I love Stephanie's quote. She says, I'm on the bus, but I have no idea if I'm on the right bus or where my stop is, and I can't find the bus map.
Well, that's what we're going to work on over our next series together, is what's the route? Where are we going? What's the destination?
And so this is a great segue. When we go into the next session, Shelley will continue to keep that view of, what worked, what didn't work, and how do we build those relationships with students. And then I'll start talking a little bit more operationally about how we can begin to recognize the barriers that prevent inclusion through classroom design, so that we can create classrooms that work for all students. So you're going to jump back on that bus with us.
Get on the bus.
On the bus. So what we're going to do, last poll alert here, is, has this session framed your understanding of why inclusive practice is important and what MTSS is? And we're going to dive more deeply into it, but we'll just launch this last poll here. I wish I had this song, I'm coming up.
I
know. The world to know.
Last time we did this, we had a DJ. Katie.
I know. Well, the problem is we're live streaming. You can't live stream licensed music.
Oh no, I didn't even know that.
The Fair Use Act does not cover live streaming. It does cover educational lessons.
Okay, interesting. We'll have to make our own music.
Oh my gosh, we're totally clear if we just record an album in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. What was the first one? Shake it, make it a new system. Okay, now music teachers, you have to help us out here, because my tongue, I'm a little pitchy. I love it. There's a few people here that need more information. Thank you so much for being honest with us. I think that we have to create a culture where we realize that we can do more and we can do better. And that's what we want everyone to realize, that we're leaning in, we're intending to connect. If we're not there yet, we get 2 more tries, baby. And with students, you have way more time than that. So we're going to transition it over to the team. Lindsay is here to make some final announcements. And then in a minute, you will dance your way to dinner. All right, Lindsay, you're up.
Sorry, I lost all control of my controls. Can you guys see my slide? I hope.
Yes, we can.
All right, there you go. Okay, everybody. I saw lots of questions in the chat about being able to still register for the next 2 sessions. Yes, you can. There is the bit.ly for registration. Hopefully someone in our team can throw that into the chat box for y'all. The next session is February 6th at the same time, 4 to 6 p.m. We are going to upload the resources and the recording to this website, not immediately, but as soon as possible. In the next couple days, we will put the recording from the live stream up there, the resources that Katie shared, and anything else that we think you all will want from these sessions. So Thank you all for being here. Clock hours will be made available after the third session, and you don't need to do anything except log into the webinar to get those. We can print out attendance and see who was here. So thank you so much. Tanya, did you want to send us off? Oh, we can't hear you, I don't think. I still can't hear you.
I'm not seeing it either.
I'm not
Or
hearing you,
hearing.
Tanya.
Wrong sense. If you type in a message, we can read it for you as our final goodbye. So Shelley, we're going to create a cover version of I'm coming.
I love it. I'm totally
Band is called Inclusion Bus. Hashtag Inclusion Bus.
Inclusion Bus of Love.
Okay, can't even wait. And thank you so much for the interpreters. You were absolutely.
You worked hard today.
Goodness gracious. It's hard to match Shelley and I's energy, and it was brought. It was brought. Look at it. All the hearts,
Totally.
all the hands.
You both deserve a nap. Was there three? 3 interpreters? You all deserve a nap.
3 languages. We had ASL, Mandarin, Spanish. What other languages, Lindsay?
Aaron, Vietnamese.
Wow.
Yeah. Amazing. So
Cool.
much love to all of you. Shelley, fabulous to see you. Can't wait
Always
to
a
see you
pleasure.
again in a couple of weeks. And get out bus.
Yes.
Yay!
Aaron, there are some questions in the chat. If they registered for one session, they're already registered for all 3, correct?
That is correct. We'll see you again in February.
Yep. So you're good to go. We'll see you.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, look at that. We're the click and clack of education show.